Hi, I'm Sensei Steve, here at Classical Martial Arts of Long Island. I want to talk to you a little bit today about aspects of self-defense. Self-defense is a big topic in a lot of formats. Self-defense is one part of martial arts. It's not all of martial arts. Some part of martial arts is tradition, culture, lineage, things that are passed down. That's one part of it. Another part of martial arts is health, right? How you protect yourself against time and gravity, how you stay healthy, how you deal with the ergonomic forces on the body, how you sit there in front of the computer and not degrade and become a turtle in a shell, right? All those components are parts of martial arts, as well as the practice of traditional weapons and traditional forms and wearing the traditional uniforms of the areas from which the martial arts come from. But we want to talk a little bit today about self-defense and a specific aspect of self-defense. Are the classical martial arts and their approach to self-defense relevant in a modern world? In a modern world where modern tools change things dramatically, right? If you're carrying a firearm, well, maybe that is one of the ultimate solutions to self-defense. Or is it? That's a question. Now, I've got a black belt. This has 6 degrees on it, 6 bars. I'm a 6-degree black belt, recognized by the World Shoshin International Karate Federation. That's not so bad. Okay, cool. But does that mean that my hands are as effective as a firearm? No, and I'd be foolish to think so. But the question of self-defense doesn't always lie in your hands. It doesn't lie in your belt. It lies somewhere in here, or maybe in here, or maybe somewhere between the two of them, right? Ultimately, when we talk of self-defense, we have to realize that's not the same thing as combat. It involves fighting, sometimes. Sometimes it involves avoiding a fight. Sometimes it involves standing up for yourself. Sometimes it involves standing up for someone else. So the word self-defense is very broad. And in all honesty, it's technically more of a legal term because it's lawyers who determine what action classifies as self-defense or as offense. But when we talk about it in general, what we're trying to drive for is the idea of how do you respond to an aggressive world? A world of individuals who don't always stay in their lane, who don't always play by the rules. Well, most of you drive. Maybe somebody watching this doesn't drive yet. But when you drive, we always say defensive driving. You watch for the person who's going to get out of the lane. You watch for the person who's doing telltale activities that make us say, not so safe. Maybe I want to avoid that person. Maybe I want to slow down. Maybe I want to speed up and get around them. Maybe I want to get into a different lane or even get off the highway if they're driving that hazardously. And I don't really want to get into a match, so to speak, with the aggressive driver who then tries to hurt me, has road rage, I guess properly, has road rage and tries to drive me off the road. So I avoid at every instance. We should avoid that problem driving. Makes perfect sense. We don't always apply the same logic to what we consider self-defense. What are we defending in self-defense? If we're defending ourselves with the hope that we don't enter into a self-defense situation, then we should be as evasive as when we're driving. We should be scanning the room, looking for how many exits there are in the room. How easily can we get there? Whether we're defending ourselves against another person or against a fire. If you go to a restaurant, do you notice where the fire exit is? Do you notice where the fire extinguisher is? Oh. When you go into your office at work, do you notice any of those things? Do you notice if you have a clear access to the exit, or did the maintenance guys have to close that up that day? Heaven forbid there's an emergency. All that's the awareness. What traditionally in Japanese martial arts we call zanshin, which means clear mind. And they say in the traditional samurai culture, they say, Happo no zanshin. For the clearest of mind in all 8 directions. Well, the 8 directions can be the 8 directions of the compass, sure. Or sometimes people define the 8 directions as front, back, right, left, up, down, and then center. Right there, I have 6 directions around me, plus the center point, which is me, my heart, mind. As I turn and move through the dynamics of time, those 7 points operating through time, making the 8th one. Right? So there's another way to interpret that. So part of self-defense is awareness. What's going on? Who's acting aggressive? Who do I not want to deal with? Who's having a terrible day at work? And I can be an irritant if I want to be. Or I can avoid that. And I can be as smooth as butter and just glide past that person and not get into the argument at work. That person at work isn't going to hit me. That person at work isn't going to really, lash out that I need to use my hands, my martial arts skills, or if you're carrying a firearm, use a firearm. But do you have to antagonize them? You may have to defend yourself against their comment, against their aggressive action or activity, against their aggressive behavior, their aggressive attitude, their aggressive use of your stapler. Because it's your stapler. Well, at least I came from the part of the company where they gave it to you and they're going to requisition it back at the end of the day or at the end of the time you're there, so you got to account for those things. Well, you may say that's kind of silly. That's not self-defense. It's not. Where does your self end? And so what I'm driving at is there's a range of response. There's a range of response between the maintenance of your borders of where you end. And from a classical martial arts perspective, you don't end at the end of your body. You end wider than that. My original martial arts teacher, when I was a kid, and we said to him, oh, Sensei, teach us more self-defense. 14 years old. He said, self-defense? He goes, you guys got to learn how to defend yourself against Madison Avenue. I'm like, what? And he said, whose name is on your blue jeans? Whose name is on your clothes? He goes, that's not your name. You're not Calvin Klein. Who's that? And we didn't understand. I didn't understand it when I was 14. But we were saving our hard-earned money we were doing for our part-time jobs to buy clothes that were brand names. So we could show off someone else's name and become an advertising billboard for somebody else. And he said, oh, they're attacking you. They're controlling you. And you're letting it happen. He goes, you'd be better off learning how to defend yourself from that than worried about who's going to punch you in the face. Right? Because when they go to punch you in the face, it's often pretty clear. And then you know what to do. You know how to act. So if you do carry a firearm, I hope maybe if you do, you've got to be careful with it and take all the right training and use it judiciously. Even, as I understand the law, you're not supposed to wave it around and quote unquote brandish it. So you're not supposed to use it as a tool of intimidation. It's a tool of last resort. And heaven forbid you have to use that tool. But if you do, that's in the most dire of circumstances. That's the same thing with a lot of the strikes we learn and the things we learn in martial arts, most dire of circumstances. But it's in all those other ones that come as precursors to the dire situation, where the complexity of response of self-defense that's preserved in the traditions of classical martial arts are most relevant. So it's kind of an overview of why maybe, hopefully, the classical martial arts are still relevant to training the individual. Because we often say, it's a common saying in martial arts, it's easy to sharpen a sword, hard to train a swordsman. The swordsman's the person who wields it. And that's just as true with a firearm, with a knife. It's just true with an automobile, which can turn into a weapon in a heartbeat, right? It's easy to train the use of that tool, but train the person behind it. That's the question. Well, hopefully that was interesting to listen to. If you want to come down, hang out with us, do some of the stuff that we do, learn some of these things, please come on down to Classical Martial Arts. We'll give everyone a 2-week free trial to get on the mat and try the variety of classes we have. And we'd love to see you and have you trade ideas with us and train a bit with us. Have a great day. Thank you. Domo arigatou gozaimashita.